Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to be continuing to look at the May-June 2019 CSEC Economics Paper 2. So that's the May-June 2019 CSEC Economics Paper 2. So we looked at questions 1, 2, and 3 before, and so now this video would be dedicated to question 4 naturally. But before we jump into it, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you know when Learn SKN drops question 5 for the 2019 May-June CSEC Economics Paper 2. Alright, so let's jump into it right now. Number 4. Define each of the following terms. And again, you know, the definitions are 2 marks here. Corporate bonds and treasury bonds. Corporate bonds and treasury bonds. And so we know corporate bonds are basically IOUs issued by a company or corporation. So they issue a bond, as it says, and that bond has a maturity period, and when it matures, how much ever the bond was valued, that's how much you'll get paid in return. The same thing is for treasury bonds, except that it's issued by the government. So they call them treasury bonds because it's the government who issued these ones. Alright, so if we jump to the textbook, we'll see the 2 different ones right there, the treasury bills and the corporate bonds. Okay, so treasury bills are notes. These are debt securities issued by the government. Bills and bonds represent loans to the government. So they are debt securities issued by the government, hence they are called the term treasury. And they are bills and bonds, they represent loans to the government. So the buyer of the bill or bond is giving the government a loan in a sense. Alright, so that's why it says IOU. The government will give an IOU saying, okay, the value of this bond might be, let's say, $30,000. It matures in 5 years. I owe you that until 5 years, and when 5 years come, I pay you with interest, and that's that. Then you have the corporate version of it, corporate bonds. Corporate bonds are long-term debt security issued by companies or corporation. A bondholder is a creditor who has claims against the company equal to the value of the bond. Once the claim of the bondholder is paid off, the bondholder has no claim on the company. So that's the corporate bond. Same thing with the government bond, the treasury bills, same thing. Alright, so you define those two, you get your easy 2 marks for that one. Well, 4 marks total. Then we go down to part 2. State 2 qualities of money. 2 qualities of money. And you know, money has certain characteristics, such as it has to be durable, it has to be divisible, it has to be acceptable. All those things. Those are the qualities or the characteristics of money. And so let's look at what the textbook has for them so that you don't get the mix up between the functions of money. A lot of persons tend to do that. The features and the qualities, they get to mix up within the function. So here we go. These are the features or the qualities or the characteristics of money. And so we have them right there. It must be divisible. It must be portable. It must be legal tender or legally accepted. It must be acceptable. It must be durable, and it must be relatively scarce. So all those are features or characteristics, or as the example, the qualities of money. Again, they only asking for what? For 2, and so we have it must be divisible. It must be portable. It must be legal tender, it must be acceptable, it must be durable, and it must be relatively scarce. Alright, so those are the qualities or features or characteristics of money. So far, so good. Next question. Okay, a very interesting question. The informal sector of a country contributes positively to a personal and national development. Discuss each of the following benefits of the informal sector. And so we have economic buffering and we have cost savings. Very nice application question right here. And so we're going to try and go in the textbook to see what we can do with that one. So we have application question here again. So here we go. The informal sector. Now let's look at it one at a time, because they did divide it in 2. So as it relates to, how should I put it? The economic buffering. Right, economic buffering. This simply refers to the fact that the informal economy can act as a barrier or a net a safety net, a social net for persons who might have a low income and they want to bolster that income, or for persons who are not working in the formal economy, or persons who got laid off from the formal economy. They can use the informal economy to beef up or bolster or improve their income. You know, so most of the some of the activities that take place in the informal economy is not illegal. Is not only illegal things. People might say informal or underground economy, and they might think it's all illegal stuff. But no, babysitting, that's one example. A tutor, that's another example. You go and cut a lawn, that's another example. You go and repair a fridge, washing machine, that's another example. So those are things that people would do on the side. You might want to call it side hustle. It's not a registered business, it's just something you do to make some money. So economic buffer, it helps to bolster your income for in hard times, or to make up for your spending and stuff like that. So it's a buffer, it's a net that helps to catch you when the formal sector would have failed you or not paying you enough. And so that's what they're talking about when it's an economic buffer. You have a little side hustle, a little job on the side to make some extra income to try to, buffer your economic situation. So that's what they're talking about economic buffering. And then come down to cost savings now. So that's 4 marks. Cost savings now. How does the informal economy carry out cost savings? Very clear, very simple answer. You think about it. Now, like I said, a lot of the activities that are done in the underground economy or the informal economy tend to be like I said, side hustle. And so a vendor on the street who's not registered or anything like that, that's a side hustle. They're selling. Now let me use the vendor as an example. You might have a big store, department store, and somebody on the street who's hustling. Now the price of the goods might be so different that the savings would occur with the person on the street. The vendor on the street ain't gonna sell as expensive, might not sell as expensive as the person as the big supermarket. But remember, the big supermarket has a lot of overheads and fixed costs and people to pay and things like that. But the man who does hustling is just trying to make a buck. So he might sell it just, a little above profit, things like that. So it would tend to be cheaper than if you are going into a supermarket. So the cost savings for the nationals is right there. It's built in right there. You might prefer to let one of your friends, try to repair something for you, a computer, a fridge, whatever, than to bring in a professional. You bring in a professional now, that's a lot more money. You let somebody do it, then that's some savings right there. You might not want someone to babysit your kids in a school, a proper school. So you might get a friend hold a baby during the day, something like that. So those are ways in which you can save money utilizing the informal or the underground economy. So you have to just make sure you give examples as to how these things occur, but both the cost savings and economic buffer, because I said the informal sector of a country contributes positively to personal and national development. Discuss each of the following benefits of the informal sector, and some of the benefits are economic buffering, which is right there, and of course cost savings. Keep in mind, a lot of the persons in the economic sector and the underground economy don't really pay taxes because they're not registered. And so imagine no VAT for certain things, no tax or anything like that. So next way, if you look at on a national level, you can see how we can benefit because it might give somebody a job, a little something, make a little money, right? So on a whole, you help in the country, but you wouldn't even know that because it's not registered. All right, so that's how that goes. So you drop the 4 marks, you explain the 2, and you get the 4 marks for each, as you can see. So a lovely application questions, as I said before. All right, good. Next one. I think this might be the last section. Yes, for this particular question. Yes. So let's go. Next one, Maggie and 6 of her friends are dissatisfied with their local community bank. They decided to try another method of savings. Maggie was appointed community leader and received cash deposit from her 6 friends on a weekly basis. Each week, Maggie gives a different person a lump sum equal to the total amount of the she collected from everyone. Very simple question. State 2 names by which this informal method of savings is called. And the thing is, across the Caribbean, it has different names, right? It has different names across the Caribbean. One of the popular ones would be what we call susu, right? Susu. But the next one in the East would be what we call partner hand. So partner hand. So you have partner hand, susu, you have meet in turn. I don't know which country exactly call it meet in turn. Maybe you can help me in the comment section. Who calls it meet in turn? But you have partner hand. A lot of the Leeward Islands call it partner hand. Then you have some women would call it susu. And then some persons would call it meeting turn. Don't know which one that is. So you choose any of those two and you put it in the answer and you're good to go. Just 2 marks. Then name two. State 2 names by which this thing that they're carrying out is called the informal method of savings. 2 marks. Now discuss the role of one of the informal methods of savings stated in C above. Okay, so I mean, why would they say methods when it's only one? Right? Because they say to state 2 names by which this formal method, there's only one method you're talking about. That's the susu or the pad hand or the meeting turn. So we're going to just choose the susu. Let's go with susu. Discuss the role of the informal method of saving, the susu. What exactly is susu? Well, like they describe it up here in the stem, where some persons, everybody come together, give me the money, if I'm the head, and I give a different person a hand or their batch when the time is up. Some people do it monthly with some big lump sums, some people do it weekly. That's just how it is. So what is the role of this informal method of savings? Now this is a tricky question for Max, because they're asking for the role, but it's already stated. Discuss the role of one of the method. So the susu, the role of the susu is to help persons to save their money and get it in a lump sum. So they get a lump sum payment. Instead of getting a little trickling, they get a lump sum of a large installment of cash up front, and so it enables them to make certain purchases that they otherwise couldn't make if they were doing it the traditional way. Like for example, based on the size of the hand, you can use the hand to buy a fridge, you can use the hand to buy, big box items, because you're going to get all the money one time. And so once you already get that, then you just focus on giving your hand to the next person. So the main role there is 1, so that you can bolster savings of course, help them to save more, and 2, it facilitates receiving lump sum payments. Right? That's one of the biggest major roles of it. It facilitates receiving lump sum payments so that persons can make certain purchases when their time comes. And so that's one of the major role of that one. So you go into it and okay, this is my turn. So this time around, I'm going to buy maybe a fridge. I'm going to buy maybe a stove, a microwave, whatever. So you can plan accordingly, because you know that you're going to get a lump sum of cash. Instead of to put up every month, you can actually see where the cash is coming. And so it enables you to both, if you want to, you can save. Yes. The whole idea of these things, you can save. Right? But sometimes when you save, you're not getting any interest or anything like that. But that's another story. But yeah, so you save, and then when your turn comes, you get a lump sum. And so this can help to foster a certain level of camaraderie, as they're doing there, among persons in the community. Because everybody trusts each other. So you have to trust each other, because there's some times where people run out and when their turn come, they get the money and then they can't hear from them again. They're gone somewhere in the wind, and that's troublesome. So you have to be able to trust people with these things. But yes, so the role of the susu is, of course, we said, to save and also to receive lump sum payments so that you can make some major purchases and things like that. So a quick rundown of the susu from the textbook. Susu, this is an informal arrangement where a small group of people contribute an equal fixed sum each week or month on payday to a common fund called a pot. The total amount paid in by all participants goes to one member of the group each week. So you have Maggie for that month. This sum is called a hand, so that's why they have partner hand. In some susu, there is a small tax on participants to pay the person running the susu. This is called a box. People will throw a susu with others whom they know, such as neighbors or work colleagues. Clearly, if you took one of the earlier hands, it is as if you are borrowing a sum of money at 0% interest and repaying by installments in later weeks and months. So that's a key thing to note when you're discussing the role. So you can act as both a loan and also you receive as a saving. It's dual purpose right there. You can act as a loan, because if you get the hand first, then you're not saving. You get the lump sum. That's like a loan, and you have to pay back later on in the pot. But if you get it last, then the previous hands of your parents act like savings, so you can save towards the pot, and then you get your lump sum of money. So we continue. Clearly, if you took one of the earlier hands, it is as if you were borrowing the sum of money at 0% interest and repaying by installments in later weeks and months. If you took a later hand, then it is as if you were saving up your money to get a lump sum later, and we're stressing the lump sum part of it. The susu lives on to this day in the Caribbean islands such as Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Tortola. Versions of the arrangement are called partner and meeting turns. This saving scheme is popular amongst Caribbean people, South Americans, and Africans and their descendants in parts of the world such as the USA. So you see right there what we're talking about when you're looking at the susu, the role of the susu. You just outline what it's all about, and you can see the role coming out there. It's part loan, part savings, you get your lump sum, that kind of thing. Alright, so you do that and you get your 4 marks. And just like that, we would have completed number 4 of the May-June 2019 Economics Paper 2 for CSEC. So that's it. We're going to continue with question 5 next time. So you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the information. Don't be selfish. Let's get the channel growing. Share. Alright, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.